The crystal chandeliers of the Meridian Hotel ballroom cast dancing shadows across polished marble floors as I nursed my scotch, watching the entrance with calculated patience. 3 months of discovery, 2 weeks of meticulous planning, and now the final act was about to begin. I'd arrived early, positioning myself near the bar where I could observe everything while appearing casually detached. My wife Rachel made her entrance at precisely 8:15, fashionably late as always. But she wasn't alone. Her arm was linked through that of Victor Ashford, our company's CEO, a silver-haired man 20 years my senior who commanded rooms with the kind of confidence that came from old money and older privilege. Rachel wore the emerald dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she claimed made her feel frumpy. Apparently, it made her feel differently when worn for someone else. I watched colleagues turn to admire them, the golden couple of Ashford Industries. Victor's hand rested possessively on the small of her back, fingers splayed across silk in a gesture of ownership that made my jaw tighten. Rachel laughed at something he whispered, tilting her head back in that way she used to do with me, years ago, before late nights at the office became her religion and Victor became her god. They worked the room like politicians, stopping to chat with department heads and board members. I recognized the performance. We'd done it together countless times at these events. But tonight, watching her play the role with someone else, I saw it clearly for what it was, theater. And I'd purchased front row seats to the final show. "Quite the entrance," murmured James from accounting, sidling up beside me. His eyes followed the couple with undisguised curiosity. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore." "No," I agreed, taking a slow sip of my drink. "They're not." The discovery had been almost laughably cliched. A forgotten phone, an unlocked screen, messages that painted a picture more explicit than any confession. But it wasn't the affair itself that had gutted me, it was the contempt woven through their conversations. The way they'd laughed about my obliviousness, my dedication to a marriage Rachel had already cremated. Victor had called me the devoted lapdog, and Rachel hadn't disagreed. So I'd done what any good analyst would do, I'd gathered data. Screenshots, timestamps, hotel receipts that Rachel had carelessly left in her laptop bag. Email chains discussing promotions I'd earned but that had mysteriously gone to others. A paper trail of corruption that tied their personal betrayal to professional malfeasance. Victor had been using company funds for their trysts, channeling money through fake consulting contracts that Rachel, as CFO, had approved. They finally approached the bar, Victor's hand never leaving Rachel's body. Up close, I could see the flush in her cheeks, the brightness in her eyes that I used to inspire. She wore the diamond necklace Victor had given her. I'd found the receipt, $50,000 of company money disguised as a client gift. Victor's eyes landed on me, and something flickered there. Triumph. He leaned closer to Rachel, whispering loud enough for me to hear. "Tonight she's with me, not you." The words hung in the air between us, a gauntlet thrown with the certainty of a man who never faced real consequences. Rachel's eyes widened slightly, a flush of embarrassment or excitement creeping up her neck. She waited for me to react, to make a scene, to give them the drama that would paint me as the jealous, unstable husband. Instead, I smiled. Not the broken grimace of a defeated man, but something genuine, almost peaceful. Because Victor Ashford had no idea that in 3 hours, the SEC investigator I'd been cooperating with would be walking through those doors with questions that would shatter more than just his evening. "Enjoy your night," I said, raising my glass in mock salute. "Both of you." The party swirled around us like a slow-motion catastrophe, beautiful and terrible in its obliviousness. I watched Rachel and Victor dance, their bodies pressed together in a way that crossed every professional boundary. Her head rested on his shoulder, his lips brushing her temple with casual intimacy. Around them, colleagues pretended not to notice or whispered behind champagne flutes, spreading gossip like wildfire through dry grass. I made my own rounds, playing my part in this elaborate charade. With each conversation, I planted seeds. To Linda from HR, I mentioned concern about unusual consulting expenses. To Robert from the board, I casually wondered about the transparency of recent financial decisions. Nothing accusatory, just gentle questions from a worried employee who cared deeply about the company's integrity. You seem remarkably calm, observed Patricia, our head of legal, studying me with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Most men would be making a scene. Would they? I countered, swirling the ice in my glass. Or would they be doing exactly what everyone expects, making themselves look foolish while accomplishing nothing? She regarded me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You've always been the strategic one. I've told Rachel that for years. The mention of my wife's name between us carried weight. Patricia knew. Of course she knew. She was being groomed for Victor's position, the successor he'd chosen before he decided to burn everything down for an affair. Patricia had been documenting everything, I realized, watching the calculation behind her eyes. She was building her own case, waiting for the right moment to strike. The company deserves better, I said simply. It does, she agreed, and I understood we were allies in this, even if our motivations differed. Across the room, Victor was holding court with major investors, Rachel at his side like a trophy. She played the role perfectly, the brilliant CFO, the beautiful companion, the woman who made powerful men feel even more powerful. I'd fallen for that performance once, dazzled by her competence and charm. Now I saw the calculation behind every smile, every touch, every carefully chosen word. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Morrison, on schedule. Documentation received. This will be airtight. 3 months ago, when I'd first confirmed the affair, I'd made a choice. I could have confronted them immediately, let emotion drive my response, and walked away with nothing but my dignity. Or I could be patient, methodical, and ensure that when the hammer fell, it would shatter everything they'd built on lies. I'd chosen patience. The evidence I'd gathered went far beyond infidelity. Victor had been embezzling for years, small amounts at first, then growing bolder. Rachel had either been complicit or willfully blind, either way, as CFO, she bore responsibility. Their affair had made them careless, arrogant. They'd stopped covering their tracks as thoroughly, too intoxicated by their secret romance to notice the trail they were leaving. Victor caught my eye from across the room and excused himself from his conversation. He approached with the swagger of a man who believed himself untouchable, Rachel trailing slightly behind, her expression uncertain. David, Victor said, my name dripping with false bonhomie. I hope there are no hard feelings about earlier. Just a bit of fun. Fun, I repeated, tasting the word. Is that what we're calling it? Rachel's hand found Victor's arm, a gesture of either comfort or warning. David, don't make this difficult, she said, her voice low. We're all adults here. Are we? I asked, genuinely curious. Adults take responsibility for their choices. Adults face consequences. I'm not sure either of you qualify. Victor's expression hardened, the mask slipping. Careful, he warned. You're still an employee of this company. I'd hate for this evening to affect your career prospects. The threat was laughably transparent. He thought he held all the cards: my job, my marriage, my reputation. He had no idea I'd already resigned, effective immediately, with a severance package negotiated quietly through Patricia. He didn't know about the evidence sitting in federal hands, or the investigator currently entering the building. My career prospects, I mused. Yes, let's talk about that. Or better yet, let's talk about the Meridian Consulting Group. Rachel went pale. Meridian Consulting was the shell company they'd been using to funnel money, the paper trail I'd followed for weeks. The name alone was enough to confirm she knew exactly what I'd discovered. Victor's hand tightened on Rachel's waist. I don't know what you think you know. I know everything, I interrupted, my voice quiet but carrying enough weight to silence him. Every hotel room, every expense report, every fraudulent consulting fee. I know about the Singapore account, the forged signatures, the falsified board minutes. I know how long this has been going on and exactly how much you've stolen. You can't prove anything, Rachel said, but her voice shook. Can't I? I smiled again, that same peaceful expression that clearly unsettled them both. I guess we'll find out. The ballroom had grown warmer as the night progressed, bodies packed together in celebration of another successful fiscal year. Ironic, considering the fiscal malfeasance about to be exposed. I excused myself from Victor and Rachel, leaving them to whisper urgently to each other, and made my way to the terrace for air. The city stretched below, lights twinkling like terrestrial stars. I'd loved this view once, from the office I'd worked so hard to earn. 60-hour weeks, sacrificed weekends, missed opportunities, all in service of a career at Ashford Industries. All while my wife had been climbing a different kind of corporate ladder, one rung at a time into our CEO's bed. I thought I'd find you here. I turned to find Rachel standing in the doorway, alone. She'd shed the confident mask she wore inside, and for a moment, I glimpsed the woman I'd married 12 years ago. Vulnerable. Uncertain. Almost human. Victor's making calls, she continued, stepping onto the terrace. Trying to figure out what you've done. What I've done? I laughed without humor. That's rich. She moved closer, and I caught the scent of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, the one I'd bought her every birthday. David, please. We can fix this. Whatever you think is happening. I don't think, Rachel. I know. I pulled out my phone, opening the folder of screenshots I'd organized meticulously. Would you like to see? There's the text where you called our marriage a comfortable prison. Or this one, where Victor promises to divorce his wife once the Jenkins merger goes through. That was 8 months ago, by the way. Or perhaps this email chain, where you two discuss hiding asset transfers through offshore accounts? Her face crumbled, tears spilling down carefully made-up cheeks. Once, those tears would have destroyed me. Now they felt like manipulation, another tool in her arsenal. It just happened, she whispered. We didn't mean for it to go this far. No, you meant to keep it hidden forever. You meant to have your career, your affair, and your stable home life all at once. You wanted everything without consequences. And what about you? She shot back, anger flashing through the tears. You were never home, always working, always putting the company first. Do you know how lonely I was? Lonely enough to commit fraud? I countered. Because that's what this is, Rachel. Not just an affair, though that's devastating enough. You approved fraudulent expenses. You signed off on fake consulting contracts. You helped Victor steal from the company, from our colleagues, from people who trusted both of you. I didn't know. You're the CFO. My voice rose despite my attempts at control. Every transaction crosses your desk. You knew, or you should have known, and either way, you're culpable. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly small despite her designer dress and expensive jewelry. What did you do, David? What did you tell them? The truth, I said simply. Every documented instance of fraud, every suspicious transaction, every piece of evidence I could find. I gave it all to the SEC 3 weeks ago. Tonight's just the beginning. The color drained from her face completely. The SEC? David, do you understand what you've done? Victor will go to prison. I could lose my career, my license, everything. Yes, I interrupted. You could. You probably will. Just like I lost my marriage, my trust, my belief that the person I loved most in the world actually valued me as more than a convenient placeholder. I did love you, she said, and maybe she even believed it. I still do, in my own way. Your way involves fucking your boss and laughing about my devotion in text messages. Forgive me if I don't find that particularly loving. Rachel's composure shattered completely. She sank onto a nearby bench, shoulders shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and genuine. Part of me, a dying part, wanted to comfort her, to fall back into old patterns of caretaking and forgiveness. But I'd learned something these past 3 months. Love without respect is just elaborate self-destruction. And Rachel had made abundantly clear exactly how much she respected me. Did it ever occur to you to just leave? I asked, more gently now. To divorce me honestly if you were unhappy? Victor said we had to be careful, she admitted between sobs. His prenup, the board's morality clause, his reputation. We were going to wait until after the merger, until his position was secure. So I was what? A placeholder? Insurance in case it didn't work out with Victor? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. The terrace door opened again, and Patricia appeared. David, your guest has arrived. Security's escorting him to the conference room. Victor's been informed. Thank you. I turned back to Rachel one last time. For what it's worth, I hope you find whatever you were looking for. I really do. But you won't find it by destroying other people. I'm sorry, she whispered. So am I said, and meant it. Sorry for the years lost, for the love wasted, for the future we'd never have. Sorry that it had come to this. But not sorry for what came next. The conference room on the hotel's mezzanine level had been reserved for overflow meeting space. But tonight it served a different purpose. Detective Morrison sat at the head of the table, 2 federal agents flanking him. Patricia stood near the door, arms crossed, wearing an expression of grim satisfaction. And I took my seat opposite Victor Ashford, whose silver hair and expensive suit couldn't hide the sweat beading on his forehead. Rachel entered last, escorted by hotel security. She'd repaired her makeup but couldn't hide the red-rimmed eyes or trembling hands. When she saw the federal agents, she froze. What is this? Victor demanded, though his voice lacked its usual authority. Detective Morrison opened a thick file. Mr. Ashford, Mrs. Harper, I'm Detective John Morrison with the Financial Crimes Division. These are Special Agents Chin and Rodriguez with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We'd like to ask you some questions regarding financial irregularities at Ashford Industries. I want my lawyer, Victor said immediately. That's your right, Morrison agreed. But you should know that Mr. Harper has provided us with substantial documentation regarding fraudulent expense claims, embezzlement through fake consulting contracts, and misappropriation of company funds. We're prepared to file charges tonight. Victor's eyes found mine, burning with hatred. You vindictive bastard. This is about Rachel, isn't it? You couldn't handle that she chose someone better. Better? I laughed. A man who steals from his own company? Who uses corporate funds for hotel rooms and jewelry? Who's been lying to his wife, his board, and his investors for years? That's your definition of better? We're in love, Rachel said, finding her voice. You wouldn't understand. I understand that love doesn't excuse felony fraud, Agent Chin interrupted. Mrs. Harper, as Chief Financial Officer, you approved payments to Meridian Consulting Group totaling $3.7 million over 18 months. That company doesn't exist beyond a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. The account receiving those funds belongs to Mr. Ashford. I didn't know, Rachel protested weakly. Your digital signature is on every transaction, Rodriguez added, sliding papers across the table. Your IP address, your computer, your authorization codes. Either you knew, or you were criminally negligent in your duties. Patricia stepped forward. For the record, I've been conducting my own internal investigation over the past 6 months. When David approached me 3 months ago with his findings, it confirmed what I'd already suspected. The board has been briefed and has voted to terminate both Mr. Ashford and Mrs. Harper effective immediately, pending criminal proceedings. Victor surged to his feet. You can't do this! I built this company. You inherited this company, Patricia corrected coldly. And you've been slowly destroying it while enriching yourself. Your father would be ashamed. The mention of his father, the legendary founder who'd built Ashford Industries from nothing, hit Victor like a physical blow. He sank back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. The affair was stupid, Victor said finally, his voice hollow. But the money. I was going to pay it back. Once the merger went through, once my stock options vested. You were going to pay back stolen money with more money you didn't earn? I asked incredulously. How does that make it better? You don't understand the pressure, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. Maintaining appearances, keeping the board happy, competing with companies 10 times our size. I needed. I deserved. You deserved? Rachel turned on him, fury replacing fear. You told me it was for us. You said we needed a nest egg for when we could finally be together. Oh, grow up, Rachel, Victor snapped, the mask completely gone now. Did you really think I was going to leave Caroline? Divorce her and lose half of everything, including my company's shares? You were convenient, beautiful, competent, and naive enough to believe the fantasy I sold you. The words hung in the air like poison gas. I watched my wife's face cycle through emotions, shock, hurt, rage, and finally a dawning horror, as she realized she'd destroyed her life for a man who never intended to keep his promises. You said you loved me, she whispered. I loved what you did for me, Victor corrected brutally. The access to financial records, the cover for my expenses, the perfect image of success. But love? Rachel, I barely respect you. What kind of woman betrays her husband so easily? How could I ever trust you not to do the same to me? Rachel's hand cracked across his face with surprising force. You bastard. You absolute bastard. Victor touched his reddening cheek, smiling without warmth. At least I never pretended to be anything but what I am. You're the one who convinced yourself this was some grand romance instead of what it really was, a transaction. Detective Morrison cleared his throat. As touching as this is, we need to proceed. Mr. Ashford, Mrs. Harper, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and misappropriation of corporate funds. The agents moved forward with handcuffs, and the reality of the situation finally seemed to penetrate. Rachel turned to me, desperation in her eyes. David, please. I made mistakes, but don't let them do this. Tell them it was all Victor. I was manipulated, I didn't understand. You understood, I said quietly. You chose this, Rachel. Every hotel room, every lie, every stolen dollar, you chose it. And now you get to live with those choices. As the agents led them away, Victor raged and threatened, throwing around names of powerful lawyers and political connections. Rachel simply cried, her perfect facade completely shattered. Patricia waited until they were gone before speaking. That was brutal. It needed to be, I replied, suddenly exhausted. The board wants to speak with you tomorrow. There's a position opening up, CFO, ironically. You'd be perfect for it. I shook my head. I'm done with Ashford Industries. This place, it's tainted now. I understand. She handed me an envelope. Your severance package, plus bonuses for your cooperation with the investigation. The board wanted to show their appreciation. 6 months later, I stood in front of a different building, in a different city, about to start a different life. The consulting firm that had recruited me was smaller than Ashford Industries, but their values aligned with mine in ways that mattered now. Trust. Transparency. Integrity. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Ashford Industries CEO Victor Ashford sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. A second alert followed. Rachel Harper receives 3-year sentence, professional licenses revoked. The trial had been a media circus, every sordid detail exposed for public consumption. Victor's wife Caroline had filed for divorce within days of his arrest, taking half his assets in a settlement that left him nearly bankrupt. Rachel's family had disowned her, unable to reconcile the daughter they'd raised with the woman who'd committed fraud. I testified at both trials, presenting the evidence methodically, without emotion. Victor's lawyers had tried to paint me as a vengeful husband manipulating the system, but the financial records spoke for themselves. Millions stolen, lives destroyed, trust shattered, all for what? For an affair that wasn't even based on real love? My phone rang. Patricia. Congratulations on the new position, she said. I heard you're starting today. Thank you. How are things at Ashford? Recovering. Slowly. The merger fell through, but we're restructuring, focusing on core values. It's going to be a long road. I'm sorry I couldn't stay to help rebuild. Don't be. You did what needed doing. Sometimes the kindest thing is letting go. After we hung up, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The man who'd attended that party 6 months ago felt like a stranger, bitter, angry, consumed by betrayal. The investigation and trial had been cathartic in ways I hadn't expected, forcing me to confront not just Rachel's betrayal but my own complicity in our marriage's decay. She'd been right about one thing: I had worked too much, prioritized career over connection. That didn't excuse her choices, but it explained some of the loneliness she'd felt. Understanding that didn't mean forgiveness, but it did mean acceptance. A text arrived from an unknown number. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm out on bail pending appeal, and I wanted you to know. I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not for getting caught, but for what I did to you, to us. I was selfish and cruel, and I destroyed something beautiful because I was too broken to appreciate it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But you deserve better than what I gave you, and I'm sorry I couldn't be that person. Rachel." I stared at the message for a long time, emotions I thought I'd buried rising to the surface. Part of me wanted to respond with anger, to tell her exactly how much damage she'd caused. Another part, the part that had loved her for 12 years, wanted to offer comfort, to somehow make her pain less. Instead, I typed simply, "I hope you find peace, Rachel. Really." Then I deleted her number. Inside the building, my new colleagues welcomed me with genuine warmth. Over coffee, they shared stories about the company culture, upcoming projects, work-life balance initiatives. No one asked about my past or why I'd left Ashford Industries. They'd done their research, but they chose to see me as who I was now, not who I'd been forced to become. That evening, I returned to my new apartment, smaller than the house Rachel and I had shared, but mine in a way that mattered. I decorated it myself, chosen furniture that reflected my taste rather than committee decisions. The space felt lighter somehow, unburdened by the weight of secrets and lies. My sister called as I was making dinner. "How was the first day?" "Good," I said and meant it. "Really good. I'm proud of you, David. What you did took courage, not the investigation, but moving forward after. Choosing yourself?" After dinner, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere in this city, Rachel was likely sitting in her apartment under house arrest, her career destroyed, her future uncertain. Somewhere, Victor was in a federal prison, his empire reduced to rubble. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, no triumph in their downfall. Just a quiet peace that came from knowing I'd done the right thing, even when it cost me everything familiar. The affair hadn't just been about betrayal, it had been a symptom of deeper rot. A marriage built on convenience rather than connection. A career prioritized over humanity. A life lived for external validation rather than internal truth. Their punishment hadn't been my goal, accountability had been. And in seeking accountability for them, I'd been forced to hold myself accountable too, for the ways I'd contributed to our marriage's failure, for the warning signs I'd ignored, for the person I'd allowed myself to become. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and go to work. I'd build new relationships, pursue new projects, create a new life. But tonight, I allowed myself to mourn, not for Rachel or our marriage, but for the man I'd been before that party. Naive, perhaps. Trusting to a fault. But also hopeful, believing in love's power to sustain and transform. That man was gone, transformed by betrayal into someone harder but also wiser. Someone who understood that love without respect was worthless, that trust once broken couldn't be forced back together, that sometimes the kindest thing you could do was let go entirely. My phone buzzed one final time. Another news alert. Ashford Industries announces major restructuring, new leadership team prioritizes ethics and transparency. I smiled, genuinely this time. Maybe something good would come from all this destruction. Maybe others would learn from our cautionary tale. Maybe broken things could be rebuilt into something stronger. As darkness fell over the city, I went inside and closed the door on my past. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something authentic. But tonight, I was simply grateful, for truth over comfort, for integrity over convenience, for the courage to walk away from a beautiful lie and toward an uncertain but honest future. The party had ended 6 months ago, but my real life was just beginning.